The question of why would Indonesia be better to cruise than any other Southeast Asian country is very simple. It's diversity. There are 17,000 islands in Indonesia, covering 3 time zones. That in itself allows for our clients, our owners and our captains to see different areas and different cultures through that whole cross-section of very vast countryside. From the west, we've got Sumatra, one of the best cruising and surfing destinations in the world. Sumatra itself has got wonderful wildlife, got Krakatoa, and a whole lot of other features that in itself is just a wonderful cruising zone. If we then look at the central of Indonesia, we've got Kalimantan, where the orangutans are. We've got down through Java, where we can access Borobudur, the famous temples, and the beautiful Javanese culture. And then through to Bali, Menjangan, Lovina. All beautiful areas for cruising, destinations within themselves. If we then move further east, we've got Sulawesi, Manado Bitung, which are all wonderful dive locations, wonderful cultural locations. Then of course we've got the hotspots, Komodo, Raja Ampat. They in itself sell themselves for the very, very well-known reasons of the brilliant diving in Raja Ampat and the dragons, and also great diving in Komodo. If we then move further to the east, we've got the Alor group, we've got the Forgotten Islands, and up through Papua. All of these in themselves, cultural experiences, second to none, and that are not available in any other country that you will find, whether it be Southeast Asia or the world. The cruising diversity of Indonesia makes it really a special place from the point of view of any other cruising destinations, whether it be in the Asia Pacific region or in the world. The best times of year to cruise Indonesia are very, very simple. The year you can break up into 2 very distinct seasons. We have what's called the wet season, which is the summer monsoon, which is December, late December, January, February, March. In that season, the winds come from the northwest and generate high monsoon style conditions with low pressure fronts moving through with rain and winds, not cyclonic, but certainly winds stronger than we would normally get. That's the one season that is stereotypic, that we wouldn't generally recommend cruisers to come to Indonesia in the 8th parallel or anywhere to the east of Indonesia, close to Northern Australia. The best time for cruising the best location for cruising in that time is Raja Ampat. December through to March is generally considered Raja Ampat season. We then have what we call the dry season, which is between June and September. Here we get southeast trade winds. They're cold, coming off the Atlantic, and come strong, probably up to 25 knots, which is good for sailors, but not so good for cruisers. The key thing about this season is that the overhead conditions, there's no clouds. It's blue sky all the way. Very, very little rain. So that's what we would normally term the high season, or the best season for the cruising of the 8th parallel, which is Sumatra, Java, through Bali, Sumbawa, Flores, and Alor. Of course, the best seasons to be here is the intermonsoon. That's when neither of these weather patterns have got any strong foothold. So April, March is what we call the intermonsoon between in the summer, and then we have October and November, which is the intermonsoon leading out of winter. So Both of these times, there is no strong weather pattern in position. So for our motorboats, that is when the sea conditions are at their flattest. There is moderate and very, very light winds, variable, and I would consider those two times the best times to be cruising in Indonesia for motorboats. Indonesia is a vast country where the resources that you would normally find in first world countries are just not available. Good fuel, provisions that you can just go to the local shop and get. People looking around, coming to see you, where normally if you're just in a marina somewhere, you're left alone, you're left by yourself. While you're anchored in some of the more remote parts of Indonesia, you'll get quite a few people who are just very, very interested to see what the boat is, who the boat is. And again, from a privacy point of view, sometimes it looks like it's a little bit of an imposition. But given all of this, the cultural experiences, the wonderful, wonderful scenery and different landscapes that you're going to see in cruising in Indonesia really balance that out as a yin and a yang situation. From a logistics point of view, of course, getting your clients, getting your owners, getting your guests onto the boat is also very challenging. Airlines in Indonesia are certainly not what you would call punctual, are certainly not what you would call the latest flying technology. All of that leads that we really encourage our clients and our captains, if they have the opportunity to private charter their aircraft for arrivals, for certain rendezvous destinations, that is the best way to go. Relying on domestic air travel, whether it be for passenger arrival or whether it be for provisioning arrival, is again a little bit of a problematic thing due to scheduling and due to the interesting way that Indonesian domestic air travel happens. Provisioning is one thing that can be a challenge. Of course, all provisioning comes out of Bali. Why does it come out of Bali? Because Bali is the tourism base for Indonesia. It has 5-star hotels everywhere. So of course, for clients in that marketplace, they get their organic, they get their vegan, they get anything that they want. For us as suppliers to get those to the boats in the outer islands, that needs good, careful coordination. It needs good packing. It needs careful packing, and it needs somebody who knows what they're doing to get it from point A to point B where the boat is. That's a big challenge. But across the board, we find with all of our clients, with our owners, and with our captains, all of these challenges make for a remarkably memorable trip. A lot of the time, once the dust is settled on pulling off, what we find is some amazing trips for our owners. Everybody will sit down and understand that the challenges have brought about a level of satisfaction that you would normally not find in a first world cruising zone, where you just go from marina to the destination, enjoy whatever the activity was, and return again. Indonesia is an adventure. Cruising Indonesia is an adventure. The question often is put to us, where is the best port to arrive to when coming to Indonesia? The answer to that is quite simple. From the direction of where you're arriving from, we have a port that best suits for those different locations. So, if you're coming down from Phuket or Singapore and going to be arriving through the northwest of the country, we will always tell our vessels either Nong Sa Point or Biliton are the two best places that we'd normally clear boats into the country. Nong Sa Point is a more sophisticated place for the medium-sized vessels. It's certainly not a place for anything over 50 meters. 50-meter boats either Belitung, or if it's got the capability and the range, come all the way to Bali and we clear them in there. But certainly any of those three ports are the best coming from either Phuket, Malaysia, Singapore. Then, if anybody's coming from Hong Kong, if our clients are coming from Hong Kong, the Philippines, anywhere to the north, we will always use Manado or its corresponding commercial port, Bitung. Both of those are on the northern tip of Sulawesi. Wonderful, wonderful places. In fact, both of them are two of my favorite places in Indonesia to not only clear into, but to cruise around and to use as a base and a starting point for any Indonesian cruising. If we've got boats coming from the Pacific, I will always tend to either clear boats into either Biak or Sorong. And of course, they're the gateways to Raja Ampat. Whether we use Biak or Sorong, you can access for your guests and for your clients the whale sharks in Chandrawasih Bay and then onto Raja Ampat. Or if we go straight into Sorong, then you're on the doorstep of Raja Ampat and you're already into, once you've cleared into the country, you're already into the cruising heartland of one of the best destinations in the world. If you're coming from Cairns or Northern Australia, Darwin, we will always tend to either clear people in to Bali, or if they're looking at going straight to Raja Ampat, Ambon, which is in the middle of the Banda Sea, an easy passage. But if you come into Ambon, you then have direct access to the cruising of the Banda Islands, the Forgotten Islands, and Raja Ampat and Papua. So Ambon is a wonderful port. We use it a lot and enjoy the experience of doing that. And then of course Bali. Bali being the tourist center of Indonesia, you can get everything, you can stock up, you can do whatever you need to prepare for the cruising programs that will hopefully manifest themselves from that arrival. As I say, it's horses for courses when it comes to ports and when it comes to trip planning. The trip planning aspect is something that we put a lot of emphasis on with our captains and with our clients. We like to be able to show our experience from knowing all of these ports, from knowing that we have people that we can rely on, that we can trust in all of these ports, to make the captain's clearances as headache and as hassle-free as possible. With that, we tend to ask the captains quite a long time out before they arrive when we've got a very clear trip plan. That way, everything can be prepared for the very, very smooth transition of a big boat arrival, paperwork, customs, and all of the formalities that go into any Indonesian arrival. The arrival procedures, the arrival protocols are very, very similar to other countries. A little more tedious, a little more time consuming than most. Of course, when the boats do arrive, the team, immigration, customs, quarantine, all want to come on board. That's an interesting exercise for us. We obviously, again, with tolerance and patience, work with these officials. Please take your shoes off, sir. Please don't smoke in the bridge, sir, etc., etc. All of that is part of the services that we as the agents ensure for our captains and for our crew to have a very, very easy arrival and departure clearance protocols. I often get asked, what is my favorite destination or my favorite location? It's very, very hard for me to be specific with one, so I'll give you three of my best. One of them is the Ashmat region in Western Papua. That is where there's a long lost, not long lost, but certainly a long, little known tribe that still maintains traditional tribal values and still operate in a tribal sense. It's a very, very difficult destination to get to, very seasonal. We have to always access the Ashmat tribes in the intermonsoons, that being between April and May and October and November, when there's no strong seasonal winds, whether it be the summer monsoon or the winter monsoons. The Ashmat tribes, we have to do a lot of preparation. We have to do a lot of negotiation. They're not prone to wanting tourists just rocking up into their face and turning up and saying, here we are. We need to do a lot of preparation. But for the owners and for the captains with the heart and with the need to do that, it becomes one of the most memorable experiences that I can assure any travellers will want to see. Close to where the access to the Ashmat tribes is a set of islands called the K Group. It's actually part of a larger string of islands, called the Forgotten Islands. The K Group have in themselves a little group called the Tyandus. Tyandus is 6 islands of white silica sand. They're the most beautiful jewels in the middle of nowhere that you will ever find. It's off the cruising zones, nobody goes there commercially, and I can say that when we do take our super yacht clients and owners there, they have the most memorable experiences that you can ever imagine. And of course, for me, one of the number one things I've done in this country is go into the Kalimantan jungle and see the orangutans. The orangutans are in a couple of reserves on the coast of southern Kalimantan, and truly one of the most amazing experiences I've ever done personally. To go up and to see these animals in the wild, in the ever-shrinking environment that they are forced to live in, is a truly amazing thing. To a point where certainly I got very emotional watching them operate in their very human-like family circles. Really, really remarkable. Those 3 are all isolated and reasonably challenging places to go to. Of course, even within the parameters of our regular destinations and locations, we have special places. Recently, when I was in Raja Ampat, we went to a manta dive that is in a secret location that our Indonesian guide, our Asia Pacific Indonesian guide, really doesn't tell anybody. And we really ask when we do take our clients there that they do not share the information. But I've dove over 3,000 dives. This manta dive was the most incredible dive I will ever live through, where there was 12 mantas just continually on us the whole time and dancing and doing underwater acrobatics that was beyond belief. Same with when we cruise in the 8th parallel. There are some wonderful villages up in Flores that still hold traditional values and are reasonably easily accessed. One we did recently for a television crew. We went up there, they did this fantastic welcome dance, this welcome ceremony that I can honestly tell you blew this whole TV crew away. They got some of the most amazing footage that you'll ever see. And you can see now that I get quite passionate about talking about the different destinations in Indonesia. And I've only covered 5 potential experiences. From my time here, I have had hundreds of memorable experiences that one day I do hope to write about in a book. But I can assure anybody who is wanting to come here through whatever time, whatever seasons, if you stick with us, we can show you and we can do a trip plan for you that will truly be memorable, and it'll be truly something that captains, crew, owners, guests will always be able to mark down as saying, well, we've done that and that was an amazing experience. Indonesia is a country that does not allow firearms. Quite a few world expedition boats, especially if they've come from the Northern Hemisphere, especially if they've come from the Americas, tend to have firearms. We always speak to the captains before their arrival, how we're going to deal with that particular situation. There's always an answer, whether we bond them, whether we leave them in a place before their arrival, or whether we ship them on or ship them to the next destination. There is always a way that we deal with the firearm situation. Clearly, if there is only a couple of small ones and we make sure that we declare them to the customs, everything's fine. Alcohol, we always advise our clients to fully stock their boat with alcohol. Indonesia, being an Islamic country, doesn't have a great record of alcohol consumption, and it doesn't have a great record for supply thereof. So we always say, look, fill up your wine cabinet, fill up your spirits cabinets. Once you arrive, we declare them, we bond them, and we never usually have a problem with customs with any of those situations. That's a red flag for the Indonesian customs and something that we really try to avoid with as an issue. They won't let you come unless they quarantine the animal, and I can tell you now, if you love your pet, the last thing you want is for it to be quarantined in an Indonesian location. What we've tried to do since our inception with Pacific Superyachts Indonesia is focus on exactly that coverage. The ability to give the confidence to the captains to know that even when they're in the most remote places, we've got them covered, we've got them with support. It's a very, very interesting logistical challenge because the country is so big. 17,000 islands, different languages, different cultures, different customs, different ways of doing things. Our experience to date, since we started this company, has been that we always like to have somebody on the ground for when the boat arrives. With that skilled and trained personnel, the captain gets a sense of relief, gets a sense of confidence that the Indonesian that's appointed to look after them from their arrival and onwards is there for them and there to cover their every need, even in these very, very remote areas. Of course, communications is an enormous factor of what we have to do. And it's got to be clear that the communications between the captain and our service staff is airtight. We pride ourselves on being able to ensure that whatever comes up, we've got the captain's back covered and we are in a position to support and handle any of the challenges that may pop up. It's a big job and something that we've worked very, very hard at, trying to ensure that we have the personnel skilled and trained in what the super yacht captain needs, in what the super yacht crew needs. It's quite a different process from normal boats, from cargo boats, from commercial boats. So it's taken us a long time to train and to get the correct people in the correct positions so that remote area arrival, remote area operations, we've got a team, we've got personnel that can cover the boat and cover the captain wherever they are in Indonesia. Often if the boats are going to go to remote areas, I will always recommend to the captains through to the owners that they print some t-shirts. They get some very, very cheap, maybe 100 pieces, very, very cheap t-shirts with the boat's name or with some particular logo that may be representative of the vessel. These as gifts in the remote area really go a long way. Again, if they're going to be spending any time in remote areas, I'll say stock up on colouring pencils, colouring books, anything that can provide extra education resources for some of these villages in the far out islands. It really is the small things that if we, as visitors to these different areas, show that we care, show that we've got something to give, I can tell you the experience for the owner, the experience for the captains is a very, very gratifying one. Cultural sensitivity, good sense of humour, and tolerance for others. They're the keys for arriving to Indonesia.